Let's now talk about agriculture and making sure that we're heading towards food security as a country. Agriculture is a devolved function. We've talked about this a number of times. How much of agriculture has been devolved and what our county is doing about it. Our next guest is the chairman of the Agriculture CECM's caucus. CECMs are what? County Executive Committee members. As in, mawaziri wa kilimo wa county. Zote 47. He himself is the CECM for agriculture in Nandi County. Dr. Kiplimo Lagat. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you, Eric.
You're finally here.
Yes.
We see you on Twitter.
Several times, yes.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
That is the hot seat of the Situation Room, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah.
So let's have a healthy conversation.
Thank you.
And to welcome you, Bwana Muga has the day's proverb.
Our proverbs for the whole of this week have been from the country of Burkina Faso. He who speaks does not know that the listener is smart.
He who speaks does not know that the listener is smart. Dr. Lagat?
Yeah.
I
think we normally probably underestimate how people probably know what we think we know ourselves. Sometimes you think you know so much, but actually people may even know more than what you know. So unless you really have that open mind, you might always want to be very careful when you're speaking so that you actually have a fair way of passing the message you're passing in a way that whoever actually is listening also could be knowing one or two about it. Yep.
That's a good one. It's a good one. Dr. Lagat, you're Dr. Lagat, PhD.
Yep.
Not Dr. Lagat because you're Daktari wa ng'ombe wa mifugo. All right?
Yes.
You're an agricultural economist.
Yes.
So what were you doing before you joined the county government of Nandi?
I am a senior lecturer at Moi University. I teach agriculture economics and I'm on on leave of absence. It's allowed by law now that if you're teaching in the academia, you can take a leave of absence, and I took a leave of absence in 2017. So I've been teaching at Moi University for about 10 years. And when the opportunity came to go to the county in 2017, I moved. So, yeah.
Why did you decide to go?
I had a very big passion to work with the communities. Having been in academia for over 10 years, I traveled abroad and did my postdoc in US and in Europe and did a lot of research as a consultant also for a lot of international organizations, including World Bank. I felt there was a gap. I was not able to connect critically, especially the policy, on what was happening on the ground. And when the opportunity came in, I was hesitant when Governor Sang told me at first to work with him, because I could look at what I was probably making and say, will it make sense? Then I said it was not about money. It was also about connecting with the communities, trying to really be part of the solution. Sometimes it's very easy when you are a scholar and you are up there, you criticize what people do there at the ground. But when you're there now is when you realize really that's where the rubber meets the road. And you also confront the challenges that the farmers and the poor communities really face. And you're forced now to really rethink how we need to provide those solutions. And that's how I ended up working with the county.
You said that you noticed a gap in your academia journey and working with several development institutions, World Bank and the rest. You're developing policy, you're reviewing policy, and you're coming up with these brilliant plans of what should be done.
Yes.
And then you're wondering, sasa hii watu mbona wafanyi vile tumewaambia?
Exactly.
Now connect the dots.
That is exactly what made me to really go for it. It was not for anything else. I thought every time I am with the farmers, because I started engaging, of course, as a consultant also, I would engage with the farmers and work with them, but trying to look at what they were doing and what we were trying to recommend, it was not making a lot of sense. We needed to really be there to try and be realistic with the policy advice we were giving, and even the analysis, because I do a lot of data analytics and I still do that. But sometimes when you don't connect that with the reality on the ground, for example, when you recommend to the farmers to use fertilizer, and you even don't know what they apply, you don't know how they do it, the challenges they go through, how they access things, it changed my perspective completely. When I ended actually up working with the farmers, I can see things differently as compared to when I was in the academia or even when I was in consulting for those organizations. Yeah.
So what did you see, Waziri? I mean, so then what... It sounds like such a broad question. And is it possible to apply that question across board when it comes to, obviously, the agricultural issues that we are facing as a country today? What's the problem?
We have a very big problem. If you look at the issue of food security, which it's my focus so much on research, even in the academia and consultancy, is on food policy. Food security is an issue that we're still grappling with several years. Even with modernization of humanity, we've been able to increase globally almost sixfold the amount of food we produce. But as a country here in Kenya, we're still struggling to produce enough food. In Africa, despite the massive land sizes that we have, despite the potential, the endowment of the potential of the resources that we have, we still cannot feed ourselves. And the threat now is that we have a bigger proportion of our population which is malnourished. Yet, we actually think we are advancing in technology. Look at ICT and the several technologies we are doing. Yet, we have not fixed the issue of food security. Today, we depend on rain. I'm a farmer, and I planted about 4 weeks ago. I'm now really worried because the rains are not yet in Eldoret. But I was here last week, and there were a lot of rains here, but we have not had rains for the last 3 weeks now.
In Eldoret?
Yes. Yes. And Nandi, generally. There's no rain. What happens is that for us, food production is still about rain. Yet, actually, to produce food, you need water, you don't need rain. So we're still not able to crack the technology to ensure that we can supply water to produce food and feed ourselves. We still want to depend on God. Several years after God has given us knowledge on how to harness that resource. It's a pity, and it's something that even if we, like, if I was to tell you, the first technology, city, from Mesopotamia and all that, irrigation technology was here with us how many years? Thousands of years ago. But we are still not able to do it here in Africa. To feed ourselves. Today we are told productivity in Kenya is about, for maize, for example, which is a staple food, is 1.5 metric tons per hectare. In East Africa, we do about 4. But globally, people do on average of 10 to 12 metric tons. And if you look at that, it's just the technology. We're not able to crack that. We're not able to feed our people. And today we struggle to say, well, we're not able to feed the population that we have.
It's ability, though, Dr. Lagat, because I really struggle with this thing.
Yes.
But when we talk about ability, that means that for me, ability means that with all the resources available, with an intellectual mind, and then with an environment that has been made conducive for these things to then come into being, ability then comes forth out of all of these things.
Yep.
But for me, an element of desire has to be infused into this thing.
Yes.
Because for me, those elements exist.
We have the technology.
The technology is there.
You have the
Cannot
right
tell me
policies.
the resources are not there. The intellectual minds for creating these resources, policies are
Everything is there.
The human labor is there.
The human labor
Yes,
is the cap.
yes,
It
yes,
is there. The
yes,
resource is there.
yes,
So for me, the thread that brings all these things together is a desire to actually have Kenya as a country, or Nigeria as a country, South Africa as a country, DR Congo as a country, come to that place whereby you're exceeding this 12 even that we speak of.
Yep.
Can't tell me it's not possible here.
I'll tell you this, you get it correctly. If you look at it, 90% of the problem we have is leadership. Just allocating these resources, because you just need somebody to be able to allocate the resources properly. Why would you, for example, do an SGR worth 400 billion while you only need probably about 50 billion and you fix irrigation system in this country? It's about that leadership, and the leadership has to be selfless. If you don't have selflessness in the leadership that you have, then it's not going to be possible. And that's what we're looking forward to really in even the young generation and all of us.
So really how can it happen? I watched the documentary, maybe this can land. I watched a documentary about some folks who live in the mountains of Chile, and there's no water.
Yeah.
Save for drops, literally drops of dew that fall onto some trees with large leaves. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
But they have put together this technology that collects this water from these leaves, and they've piped water that then goes to farms. They don't have water. But there's dewdrops that has filled dams because of the technology that they've put together, and they can now irrigate their farms. Obviously you're in the field, so you know things like that happen. It's not in another galaxy. It's here on Earth that it happens. When we look at technology like that, and simple technology that they're able to put together, what stops these things from happening? We talk about the institutions, agricultural institutions in this country that have some mind-blowing things that they've been able to discover in order to go towards food security. But again, is it just a resource problem in terms of allocation of this fund to get these things done? Or is it not realizing that if you don't feed your people, then you've halfway lost the battle?
I'll take you to really the problem of food security, still back on leadership. And as we think about allocating resources, we have said we have enough technology, we have enough policies and all that to allocate these resources. If you don't have a priority, and we'll go back to really even issues of devolution, if you don't prioritize self-sufficiency, for example, I strongly believe no country should depend on another country on staple food. So it's upon the country to prioritize things. If before you advance on other things, focus first on fixing basic things of humanity. Housing, we normally talk about shelter, food, and clothing. Today, we literally depend on imports on anything. So the problem is this. What are our priorities in leadership? Do we prioritize to fix the basic things first, or we want to really be seen to be advancing on other aspects of life, yet we have some certain things that we ought to have fixed in our life? So really, for me, you should be able to consider priorities as part of, for example, food. Like if you look at maize, for example, in Kenya, you're not about to change maize from being food, staple food. So you cannot today abandon the maize farmer and you expect to feed this country. You cannot also give that up. That position. Look at this. Uganda has been doing very well for some time in maize production. Productivity is doing well there. Now, somebody comes and say, okay, in Kenya, we are not doing well in producing maize. So can we just depend on Uganda to produce for us? And we can as well focus on other things.
We can grow in Zambia.
We can grow other things else. But now suddenly, COVID comes in. And there is a shortage in the whole region. And Magufuli wakes up and says, guys, I'm shutting the borders. I'm not giving you maize. Now you're left there, you have your dollars, even if you had your money there. You cannot access that food there. So you cannot delegate the food security function to another country. That is why, and I think I'm happy with the Kenya Kwanza team, what they have done is actually there is now a dedicated food security advisor to advise the president. Because we told them, you cannot leave the food security function in Kiplimo. It has to be with the president because it's a national security issue. It's not just a food security, it's a national security issue. You saw in Sri Lanka, was it Sri Lanka or some countries, without food, even the president in State House cannot settle. You cannot stay there. So you've got to fix as a priority. So it's about prioritizing the issue.
But then, Dr. Lagat, you say it's about leadership. Surely it can't be that all those leaders at the national government level, all the ministers, the PSs, and then now you devolve it, all the 47 county governors and their deputies and the CCMs, all of them are not seeing what you're saying. So you've got policy, you've got all those resources that we've said, so you've got resources.
Yes.
And 13 years into devolution, with agriculture having been devolved, we cannot talk of one county that is actually producing a surplus of whatever it produces.
I think, I don't know if all of you know about this riddle, and I think Muga should be knowing that about this job that was to be done by 4 people. Everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. I don't know if you know about it.
We've heard it.
I want to hear it again.
Yes.
My memory gets faulty as I get older.
Oh, wow.
So there's this job that was to be done. Very important job to be done. And it was everybody thought that somebody must do it.
Yes.
But anybody could have done it, but nobody did it.
Everybody thought somebody should do this thing.
Yes.
Anybody could have done it.
Yes.
Nobody did it.
Yes. So, somebody got hungry that everybody did not do what somebody should have done. So, eventually, nobody did what somebody could do it. I don't know. I can still go on and on. But what it tells us is that
They lacked leadership. That's
Yes.
a clear example.
during devolution, we had
You say it like it's a past thing during devolution. Has a time gone by?
I mean the promulgation. Let me
Since
put it
2013,
clearly.
let's
During
say.
the promulgation of the Constitution, I mean, we had the transition authority,
Yeah.
and also you go back a bit. The Article 136 actually gave functions to counties. We have those functions that are allocated to the national and counties. So you have the what we call exclusive functions. We have concurrent functions and residual functions. Now there are certain functions that are left hanging here. In Nandi. Nandi we do maize, we do dairy, we do tea, we do sugarcane, and a lot of other horticultural crops like avocado is now coming up. Now you're seated here in Kiplimo or you're in State House as a president. And I play a part. The governor is responsible to have agriculture as a devolved. Now you want governor to probably prioritize food security for you. Is it the work for the governor to really prioritize food security? For us in Nandi, I would say, for me, we normally talk about food on the table and money in the pocket. To somebody who's in Wajir or Turkana, there are food shortage. So food security will be a priority. But for me, money will be a priority because almost all the households are
Everybody
fed.
has some food.
Yes, that brings me to the concept of two things. We have something called household food security and national food security. Whose function is that? It was either of them. We should be preoccupied with either of the two. If you
National, I
ask me-
can see.
Yes.
National president.
Yeah.
Household. Local leadership.
Yes.
Governor.
And that's where we need to distinguish. Somebody will think we are not doing so much as a county to address food security, but is it our function? Somebody at the national would be accusing maybe counties, or even counties would be accusing national. So to somebody who has a food deficit, he'll be accusing somebody at the national for not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And somebody at the national will be accusing somebody who has a food surplus in a county that has a food surplus for not doing much to increase productivity, production, and even to facilitate that movement of food from the
Surplus areas to
surplus
the deficit areas.
deficit areas.
Doctor, you're an agricultural economist.
Yes.
What is this discipline? What do you people do? What do you study? And what do you hope that what you've studied, or what impact is it supposed to have? What is it supposed to do for us, having studied it?
Good. It's the economics, and economics about looking at how to allocate resources. You have scarce resources against several needs. So it's just basic economics. You want to allocate agricultural resources to the so much needs. Like today we're troubling, do you want to produce for export or for consumption or for local markets, right? You've got to balance all that and the policies that we develop. So much of what we do actually is to inform policy, and in this case, food policy and even agriculture policy generally, because you have other agriculture products that are not necessarily food. So that's what we do.
You know, when you talk about what you've just said, it's broad.
Yeah.
But then there's this little detail of what we call land use. Then with this land use, if you talk of agriculture, there's crop yield.
Yes.
Okay. Now, not every part of every part of the country can produce something, but some areas will be better placed to produce certain things.
Yes.
So even as you're talking about the food security at the household level, even when that is achieved, it can contribute to the national
Yes.
food security.
Mm-hmm.
But this now comes, I'm thinking as I'm talking, this matter of land use, okay? When you advise, given your job, say you're a governor, on land use and how to optimize it so that you meet all these, because anything that happens within the county system eventually contributes to what happens nationally.
Exactly.
Okay? That you know what you're supposed to do, there is no question. Whether you are able to do what you know ought to be done, that's a different question. And whether the governor is amenable to listening and actually ensuring that these things are actually actualized is a completely different thing. Because when you're talking of leadership, I like to focus my attention on the county leaderships.
Sure.
Because that county leadership, they are the ones who are best placed to look after the interest of their people. The national matters, and those are too far away.
Sure.
Okay, now, you were in academia, you had students, and there are many things you taught them about how these things can be done.
Yes.
Now you have the job.
Yes.
They've even given you power.
Now, I'll talk about two things. On leadership at the county, and I'll still go back to what I told and do about priorities. And also to issues of land policy, land use policy, as you have alluded to. First of all, as we talk about whose responsibility to do food security, I can tell you CALDRO and all of these agriculture institutions that we have, the universities, we have developed technologies. We have good advice,
Yes.
policy advice and all that. Even we in agriculture, and I can tell you this, during this devolution, you devolve agriculture function, health, and education. But do you know wananchi will do what? They want to rate the governor not on the service delivery. They want to rate you on brick and mortar.
Infrastructure.
Okay? But is that our priority?
No.
So,
No.
I just want to bring you slowly before you. If you look at that, you notice that most counties have immediately they got into devolution. They were under pressure to fix health because you've been given as a function, and they really focus on recruiting more health workers, and they abandon even most of them ECD, which was also a devolved function, and agriculture. During the first phase of devolution, they were struggling with fixing health sector. Now, most of the counties have fixed even education. But I can tell you the biggest sector now that was really abandoned was agriculture. Do you know, since I came in, I've actually had about 170 extension officers retiring because most of them were employed in 1980, 86, up to about 1990. They're all retiring. I was in Meru last week, and there is one officer who is manning 3 sub-counties.
What?
And you expect this human being to fix food security for this country. It's not possible. We have actually, and that's when I was talking about somebody and everybody and nobody. What is happening here in Kenya is this. We commodified land when you go to land use. In Uganda, why they are really producing well is because land was not really, and somebody I shared with a friend yesterday, and he actually gave me the reasons why that there's a difference between Uganda and Kenya. During the British colonization, Kenya was a colony and Uganda was a protectorate. So they had a kingdom, and land wasn't really converted into a commodity. But here we titled...
It wasn't commodified.
Commodified, yes. So here we commodified land and titled it. Even today you have somebody clinging to land and he's not utilizing it. And because he knows that my future is guaranteed, you can hold land.
And you're safe.
Yes. So I can tell you, we are not able to produce enough just because of the kind of policies that we adopted earlier there. Going back to governor, for example, if you give a governor issues of food security to handle for you, to a governor who is in Turkana, if you give him money, he will want to make sure that he can purchase enough food from other counties to feed the population. But to the governor like mine in Nandi, he wants to ensure that, because all of them, majority of our population are able to produce their own maize so they can consume and sell the surplus, is to actually support them to increase productivity and
So
probably
they can
produce
earn more.
surplus for market. But even right now, we're struggling. We're saying, can counties now be actually restricted to produce certain commodities? It's not possible because we are in free market. I saw the other day, I think Parliament are trying to say that can we make some counties to, like in North Rift, where we produce food, that we want to restrict because most of our farmers are shifting now to sugarcane.
So we zone
coffee.
it.
Yeah, we zone
Say
it.
this is a
Is it
coffee
possible to
zone.
do that?
Why not,
Even if
bro?
it is possible, but to what effect and to what end?
Why
Yes.
not, man?
You see, specialization doesn't mean you don't grow anything else. It just means you have a
Focus.
certain advantage. Advantage. So that advantage
The
makes
advantage comes from after you get focused. So if you say, like, say, Nandi,
Yeah.
focus on maize or focus on this. So you're going to put a lot of effort in making sure that you have the soil that's conducive, get the seeds that work in your area, get, you know, the economies of scale and everything. Works, bwana.
No.
Anyway,
But it's not possible.
Let's
we go
take a
back to the
break.
classroom.
Let's take
what
a break.
We
Let's take a
normally
break,
teach in
Daktari.
economics is this, okay?
Actually,
Every human
let's take a break. We'll come back and continue on this. 25 minutes to 10. Dr. Kiplimo Lagat is a teacher. He has been teaching agriculture economics at the Moore University. Then since 2017, he joined the Nandi County government as the Waziri wa Kilimo, the CECM for agriculture. And currently, he's a chairman of the Agriculture CECM's caucus countrywide, leading all the agriculture CECs to discuss the issue of food security and addressing the challenges in agriculture. We'll continue this conversation shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
And we're talking about food security and what needs to be done at the county level and the national level to address the agriculture sector challenges. Dr. Lagat, I was asking you this during the break. Food security is all about that. It's about making sure, and we even have a national food and nutrition security policy that says we shall do everything that we can to guarantee that there is sufficient food in the country that is available to everybody across the country.
Yes.
And it is affordable. It's available. It's affordable.
Yeah.
And accessible. Accessible means it's affordable, it's all. And the food must be of good quality.
Sure.
It sounds very basic and innate. What do we need to do to make sure that that happens?
Thank you. Eric, what I would really, and it has been my advocacy all along, is that at the national level, you have first of all to, on the table of the president, food security be put as part of national security function. So that when you are allocating resources, you get to know, like today, you have, I normally talk about KDF, you pay them salaries, you make sure they are functional, they have enough equipment, up-to-date equipment every year. Does it mean we are at war?
No.
But just to protect the country, just in case anybody attacks us, you are always
Ready.
on watch. You are ready with the technology and everything. Same thing with food. You must make sure that there is enough food up to the stock of even 1 or 2 years. That in case there is any drought, in case there is any shortage, or in case there is any problem, you have enough, whether you are going to import or whichever, but make sure that the farmers are in the business of production, at whichever cost. Yet we have technology actually to reduce the cost and all that. So it is the duty. I know the other day I had you having a discussion with somebody on fertilizer subsidies. Somebody may want to question subsidies. Why are we doing subsidies? But I can tell you that fertilizer subsidy is an indispensable, just like the way we pay salaries to the KDF and allocate money to the defense ministry. You must ensure that there is enough maize in this country because Kenyans are still eating maize. 3 years ago, I would say we had what we call policy plunders. The Ministry of Agriculture then, the leadership did not have this foresight. They actually politicized the subsidy process of production. But they ended up now adopting consumption subsidies because they had no option. You did not provide the production subsidy, you ended up, because you have a crisis. Somebody in Kibera, now you deny fertilizer to somebody who is in Nandi to produce maize. What he does, he says, now if you're not giving me the subsidy,
inputs.
I'll convert my land and produce avocado. So he does not produce maize. So there is a shortage of maize in the country. The person in Kibera has got no ugali, no ugali on the table. The president in State House must make sure that there is available ugali. He goes to South Africa or to Zambia, and he finds that even Zambia also have a shortage. You go to Mexico, they don't have. Here, central bank tells you there's a shortage of dollar because Ukraine and Russia, there's war and there's enough problem with the, even carrying the foreign reserves. So you cannot import that food. It is in the interest of everyone to make sure that we have enough food, and therefore we must contract farmers, if I may say. Make sure if you're seated in Kiplimo or in State House, there is a farmer that you know. Because we know Kenyans. Why do we know them when we are voting, but we do not know them when they are producing maize? I should be able to know that so-and-so planted 5 acres. The other one planted 10 acres. And I'm able to aggregate on my table and know that, am I able to produce 50 million bags this year? If I can produce 30 million, then I need to import 20 million. And I can tell you that plant alone reduced our maize production from about 46 million bags to about 36. We lost about 10 million bags because farmers shifted.
In 3 years.
If you go to Trans Nzoia today, all the farms, I'm even told one of the guy who used to lease from ADC for maize, is now converted the whole of it into sugarcane. You can imagine how much we're going to lose. So it means if you disincentivize this farmer from continuing to be in that value chain, you lose that farmer and you'll be forced to look for alternative, which may not be cheap always and may not be guaranteed. So the aspect of affordability, accessibility may not be guaranteed if you don't take charge at the policy level. Yeah.
You know, there's this discussion that I'm not sure where it fits in, but I think and feel it's important because it's something I experienced. When I visited my grandmother as a child, even up to the time I was even in secondary school, literally everything that was eaten in that home was in the farm. Every evening you'd be told to go and get vegetables from the patch.
Yeah.
Tomatoes were on the farm, and literally. Now, in my mind, every time people talk of food security, I would say my grandmother was food secure.
Yeah.
The only thing she bought was shop, and even cooking oil she didn't really need to because she knew how to make ghee from the milk that she had.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, if our policies can focus on getting people to understand that they need to feed themselves first before we think of anything else. Those of us who are in these cities, part of the reason why we survive is because food is actually imported. We actually import food. Forget what you buy in the market.
Yeah.
People who grow it at home send it to you to eat. Are we at a point where even the people who used to be able to feed themselves in their homes, in the rural areas, are they still able to feed themselves? Or have we gotten to the point where we think in terms of crops that will give us money and we've forgotten how to feed ourselves?
Yeah, and that's where we are grappling again with self-sufficiency. That thing I talked about, household food security. Most households, you'll find somebody is buying literally everything from the market. We are now trying actually to educate even households. That's what you asked me about, what I'm trying to do. We've developed a model and we're trying to focus on nutrition. If you look at the list of food items you consume every week, so we tell somebody, can you list all the items you actually consume? Then out of that list, can you tick what you produce in your own farm? Can you tick what you buy from the market? And can you tell us from the list of what you consume, what actually you can produce? You literally notice that people can tick everything. But you'll find somebody buying onions, cabbages, and I can tell you, we had a story even Governor normally talk about telling our farmers. Somebody going to the posho mill to buy unga. But there's a lady who has moved all the way from Eastern and has opened a posho mill somewhere there. But behind the shops, he has actually a kitchen garden. He's able to produce tomatoes. He's able to produce onions and everything else, vegetables. Now the person coming to, because he produced the maize, so he brings them to the market, he mills them, and then going home, he buys the rest of everything that he could have actually produced
himself.
And in my research, I found out that actually households that do commercialization of crops are more food insecure compared to households that produce their own food at home. Because when you produce more, you actually eat more, and it means also the children are likely to be more nutritious. Yeah.
So all those things that you were doing in academia, and then decided, you know what, let me go into the kitchen and see what's happening and try and fix things. What have you done since 2017 when you joined the county government? How can we say Nandi has benefited from this knowledge that Dr. Lagat, their son, has brought back home?
Sure. First of all, as I told you, really priorities. I have to really stick to the priorities of the governor also, remember. So, and I have to see also what the governor is being charged on as part of performance. When we came in, there was a lot of pressure. Of course, previously I was working with especially the dairy farmers in Nandi as a consultant through some projects. And what we needed most was actually to support farmers to do value addition. And as we're talking right now, we are actually about to commission one of the biggest milk processing plants now in Western Kenya, in Nandi. And that is my baby project. It's going to produce to value add milk up to 200 liters, 200,000 liters per day.
Daily.
From across
Yes,
the
whole country. So we've actually established a union, dairy union, composed of about 40 primary cooperatives, and it's increasing. So that one, once we aggregate, because what I noticed was that these other milk processors were buying our milk at a very low price. It was averaging about 25 to 28 shillings. So what I told them, first of all, is that you guys, if you sell individually, you get a raw deal. Can you come together? So we registered a dairy union and negotiated for a price monthly, not annually. So they used to get actually an annual price. So even when there's fluctuation in between, the person who was benefiting was there, because you negotiate for the lower price, so that even if there is better prices in the market, the processor was the one benefiting. So what we have introduced is that all processors come to meet with the farmers every day, 16th of the month, to negotiate for the prices for that month, the following month. So, and prices went from average of around 27 shillings to 45 shillings
per liter.
That was the change, just fixing the policy on it and saying we cannot sell our milk on an annual price. We are going for a monthly price. So we aggregate the milk, and because the processor will be seeing 50,000 liters, not 5,000 liters, he's able to also give you a better offer of a price, because he knows that at a one-stop shop I can collect more volumes of milk. But then it was a preparation towards now processing. So eventually we will actually ensure that these farmers can process. And I can tell you, because you are my neighbor, we supply actually the entire Nyanza Western region milk up to about 300,000 to 400,000 liters every day from Nandi. Wow. And all those milk are taken through a process that is not hygienic, sometimes contamination, and also even the prices, they may not get even better prices there. But in the same shelf, you'll find Brookside selling the same 1 liter at 120 shillings. Yet the farmer could have benefited from that margin. So we're actually trying to ensure that they can value add and remain competitive. We have also supported farmers, like we have one of the poultry processing plant. Now we'll be selling you guys here in Nairobi slaughtered chicken. Kienyeji, organically produced. Yes. And we have a slaughterhouse that will be opening within the next 2 months.
So
and
farmers
this is run by women cooperative.
With the same model of everybody coming together with your birds and then now.
Yes. And they are taught now how to do it organically. You don't use any chemicals. You actually leave them to free range, especially under the tea bushes. You can let the chicken now free range, so long as you can secure the land so that you don't have dogs and the rest attacking them. So you don't need to use a lot of chemicals or anything, but you have a naturally, and actually we want now to reduce. You don't get the chicken that has been laying eggs now being converted to be eaten, so that you find it's very hard. No, we'll actually have about 5 to 6 month old chicken slaughtered for you, and it might, the texture is like a broiler, but it's actually kienyeji.
And all of this is under the support and guidance of the county government, directly involved in what these groups of people are doing. Okay. Is it a model then that can be replicated then around the country?
Definitely. It is, and it's happening in most of the counties. We have a World Bank project called Agric, and actually part of what we're doing also, we got some support from the World Bank projects that we have. What happens actually, and I know Bungoma, Trans Nzoia, Narok, and even Kisumu and the rest are actually coming up with all this value addition. But the model, especially for the Kenya Kwanza, is going cooperative. The biggest challenge we still have is actually strengthening those cooperative institutions so that they can support. And part of what I did, I've developed a policy on cooperative management. We noticed was that these institutions are very weak. Sometimes you find somebody in the bank will actually go and cheat the officials in a cooperative to borrow money. Can you borrow 2 million? Now the officials will now take the same money that they were collecting from the farmers.
Yeah.
They use it to repay the loan that they borrowed, maybe to invest in a value addition facility. So we're trying to stop that and say, can we step in as a government, support them so that they don't borrow? So I have a cooperative that I'm trying to help them now revive. They are a critical mass of farmers who are producing milk. But then because they were cheated into taking a loan, the person who actually gave them the loan closed shop and took all the money that farmers had collected that month. And farmers abandoned the venture because they thought it was no longer possible. But if you look at it keenly, it's not that farmers cannot produce. It is because of the weak institutional structures in the rural areas. And I think part of my biggest input in supporting, and not only in Nandi, because we're working across, I work in the sector working group within the agriculture sector. We're looking at how to fix these institutions in all counties to make sure that they are efficient, they are transparent and accountable.
Doctor, I want to ask a question. This is something we've talked about here at great length, is the role of this cadre of worker we call the extension worker. Do you have this cadre within the agricultural sector? And how have you structured their work? And how have you structured their work to fit in with the policies that you have and the structures that you have in place to grow this diversity of agricultural enterprises within your county?
Now, my biggest challenge with this issue of extension is that, do you know we have over 300,000 graduates who are not employed? Yet we have a big shortage. In my department alone, before devolution, we had a staff workforce on extension unit of about 400. But right now I have about 100.
Why?
And 50. During devolution, as I told you, really, the focus was so much among counties on health. And that's why we are actually, the president the other day has directed that we actually complete on transfer of functions that were devolved. Yeah, so we are looking at some of the functions that were devolved and also trying to work with the CRA to allocate and even ring fence resources to sectors.
Can I ask,
so that
before you
agriculture is
continue,
not,
can I ask this question? What the president said was timely, but is the money going to follow function?
That is what it should happen. In fact, actually, we are meeting next week as a sector task team, and what we are going to do actually is to ensure that resources follow the functions, and we'll actually have to ensure that every ward, and what the president has directed, that every extension officer must be given a given size of land to manage, not only the farmers. We are looking at now the land size, so that you monitor and you remunerate now the extension officers according to that. But I can tell you, most of them have not been promoted. The reason, we focused much more on health. Now education and agriculture are now being given some attention.
Now is when agriculture is getting the attention.
Yeah.
Okay. You also understand that teams also working with IGTRC, the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee.
Yes.
They're working on fully unbundling some of this.
Yes, I'm a member of the
Very
task
good.
team.
Dr. Kiplimo Lagat, I was about to say Kiplimo good. Dr. Kiplimo Lagat is a CECM for agriculture in Nandi County and chairman of all the CECMs for agriculture across the country in their caucus. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Harry.
Thank you so much, Eric.
It's a pleasure having you.